You guys, it is a gorgeous day outside. The sky is so blue, makes me want to go out there. I don't know when I became a weather person, but I just felt like you needed to know that. You may have noticed, but you guys are at a different angle than usual. So I'm not like looking down at the camera like I have been. You're actually sitting on Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, so gave you a little height there. Welcome back to Muggles and Mocha, and if you are new here, then welcome. This is our Harry Potter book club. We're covering each Harry Potter book one chapter at a time, and honestly guys, this has just been such a light for me, this book club. I've loved going through the Harry Potter books so far, and yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed it too. This book club is connected to my editing website, MadisonKdarby.com, where I offer different book editing services and writing services, so check that out if you're interested. And also, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I love getting new followers on there, and you can keep up whenever there's new Muggles and Mocha material. Okay, I promised myself I wasn't going to spend too long on an intro because this is a longer chapter and we have a lot to cover, so let's dive in. I have my coffee for today in this lovely mug, and before we get started, I hope all of you liked the ghost article from last week. I've had some really good feedback from it, and I don't know what it was about that article and the video, but I just really enjoyed making it, and I'm excited to talk about more spooky stuff like that coming up. So, without further ado, let's start Chapter 9, The Writing on the Wall. I know you've probably already realized this, but this chapter is a game changer. It's where the main conflict of this book is fully introduced, along with the opening of the Chamber of Secrets, which, that's the name of this book, so you know it's important. In this chapter, a lot happens, and we even get a small introduction to another conflict that's going to accompany us through the rest of the book, and that is the school thinking Harry is Slytherin's heir, and all of the stress Harry goes through with that. But first, we ended the last chapter with the discovery of Mrs. Norris and the mysterious message. So I didn't think about this until later, but with Mrs. Norris as the first victim, I'm assuming that the basilisk had to have been after Filch, right? Because we know that the monster, I don't know why I'm doing this, it's a scary monster, the basilisk that's being controlled by the heir of Slytherin is set to attack Muggleborns and Squibs, people who don't belong in the magical community but are there. Mrs. Norris surely wasn't this snake's target. Mrs. Norris and Filch are always together, so I'm guessing that Mrs. Norris got attacked maybe right after she and Filch split up, as they do when patrolling the school, and that she was just an accidental casualty, with Filch being the main target, which is kind of weird to think about. Have you ever thought about that before? Am I just missing things? Because honestly, I think I've always been so distracted by the message that's on the wall that I haven't thought about the fact that Mrs. Norris was the animal that was attacked. So just let me know what you think about that. Of course, since Harry and the gang are the first to the scene of the crime and then everyone else shows up, they look pretty suspicious, and they go with Dumbledore. And this is something else I wanted to talk about. So, it says that McGonagall and Snape, along with Filch, follow Dumbledore and Gilderoy Lockhart, but let's just forget about him for a second. How come it's always McGonagall and Snape? Why don't the other heads of houses go with Dumbledore when important things happen? I'm sure they do later in the book, but most often it's McGonagall and Snape. And I understand McGonagall because she's the deputy headmistress, so important. But what's Snape doing? I just don't know. What do you think? Do you feel like Flitwick and Professor Sprout just get forgotten most of the time? Because I definitely do. Just gotta throw this out there again. Lockhart is the worst in this scene, talking about how he knows exactly what it is. We've already talked about him. I won't linger. But Dumbledore, of course, is amazing, and he knows Mrs. Norris is petrified, and then the questioning begins, namely by Snape, talking about Harry, Ron, and Hermione and what they were doing in the corridor. And they're able to answer all of these questions except for the fact that Harry could hear the mysterious voice. He doesn't want anyone else to know that he can do that. And honestly, there's a lot that troubles Harry internally in this book. And this is one of them, among the many. He's hearing this whispering voice that no one else can hear. And he even asks Ron later in this chapter if he believes him because he's afraid of what other people are going to think about it. And I think at this point in the series, with all the stuff that comes about with the heir of Slytherin, Parseltongue later on, his troubles with the sorting ceremony he experienced in his first year, he just thinks that there's something wrong with him. He even starts to wonder if he's bad. And this is something that grows throughout the series as a result of his encounter with Voldemort when he was a baby. But we're going to come back to that. The gang does end up being released, and then they're just left worrying, along with the rest of the school, about what all this can mean. We move on past Halloween, and there's something really interesting that I wanted to bring up. It says that Filch can't get that message off of the wall. But it's just blood, right? Do any of you have any opinions on this? Why would he not be able to get that off, especially with a magical mess remover? And this goes on for a while that he's not able to get this off the wall, and we actually never learn if he does. Maybe it's just on there forever through all of Harry's years at Hogwarts. I don't know. There's something in the back of my mind where I feel like I played a PlayStation 2 game of one of the later books, either 5 or 6, because you get a more immersive experience in those games. For those of you who have played it, it's like you can wander all around Hogwarts and go do different missions. And I feel like one of the things you could find was that message on the wall. Am I just making that up? If you've played the game, let me know, because I feel like I almost remember that. We also learn a little bit more about Justin Finch Fletchley, who is a character that just works as a little detail to help us see what Harry's going to be going through as far as being suspected as the heir of Slytherin. And honestly, if you're going to learn anything from this book, people are just so panicky. I mean, I know that Harry, Ron, and Hermione were the first ones on the scene. That's awkward and unfortunate. But up until Harry speaks Parseltongue, because I know that that's really suspicious, I don't think anyone should have thought that he was the heir of Slytherin. Because really, did they believe that the heir of Slytherin would be in Gryffindor? It just doesn't make sense to me. And this actually brings me to my article. I kind of delve a little deeper into the rivalry between Godric Gryffindor and Salazar Slytherin, and the lasting effects that their rivalry left on Hogwarts. So if that's something you're interested in, click on the link in the description box below. It's actually really interesting to see how it affected just the House of Slytherin as a whole, people's attitudes towards them, and then of course, Voldemort and his mission was directly impacted by what went on all those hundreds of years ago. So, if you're interested, it's down below. And for this point about how I don't think that the heir of Slytherin could have been a Gryffindor, just hear me out for a second. So obviously, I don't think that we can pigeonhole every Hogwarts student in a house. There are great Slytherins, and there are nasty Gryffindors. This isn't about that or about personality or anything that comes with the differences between the 4 houses in that respect exactly. It's more about the fact that the Sorting Hat was imbued with the wisdom and the personal choices of all 4 founders. So when the Sorting Hat sorts people into houses, he's speaking with their authority. I don't think it's just his decision on what he thinks about them and where they best match. He is literally functioning off of the 4 founders' opinions, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, whenever he was made. So with that in mind, I really don't think that Slytherin, or the Slytherin part of the hat, would let the heir of Slytherin go into another house just because of how important bloodlines was to Salazar Slytherin. I mean, maybe personality would have won out, but I think that would have been just as much a factor as the personality of the person, which may seem really unfair, and Obviously, this is just my opinion, but knowing how the Sorting Hat was made, I think that the heir of Slytherin would have always been in Slytherin. After this, we found out Hermione has been searching and searching for a book to read about the legend of the Chamber of Secrets because she left her a copy of a Hogwarts history at home. And let me just say, I want to read this book so bad. Like, can you even imagine? From this point, I know we're jumping all over the place. There's a lot that goes on in this chapter. But from that point, we go to the History of Magic class where Professor Binns does tell us about the legend of the Chamber of Secrets. And let me just say, I totally understand why it's McGonagall in the movies who does this. Because first of all, Professor Binns did not make the cut to be a character in the movies, so he's just not there. And second, the movies were taking every opportunity at this point to promote Professor McGonagall as an important character, because when we read these books, like, as far as the content you're getting, obviously there's way more in a book than a movie, so they had to use all of McGonagall's screen time to do this and insert her into scenes so that we can see, hey, she's important. We get the story of the 4 Hogwarts Founders with their alliterative names, which I'm a fan of. And it's just so interesting. I love reading the history behind some of my favorite books as far as the world that the authors have created. So I always enjoy this a lot. And like I said, my article is kind of about this. So if you're interested in that too and would like to read my thoughts on it, it's below. The information that Professor Binns gives the students, along with the chamber being opened itself, guides the rest of our narrative from here until the end of the book. And we see Harry's worries actually increasing here too, especially when Ron and Hermione are talking about how terrible it would have been to be put in Slytherin, because as we know, this is a sensitive issue for Harry. I've talked about Harry's identity crisis before, but it becomes very prevalent in this book because of the Slytherin stuff, the Chamber of Secrets, his discovery that he can speak Parseltongue, his conversation with the Sorting Hat later in the book doesn't go very well. Gosh, this is just the beginning of him starting to have those thoughts, but it does become a little more prevalent later in the book. This is just the early stress that he's feeling about it, so we'll be talking about it then and not today. I promise. And I know, I want to talk about it now too, because I love it. I love when characters go through internal struggles. Honestly, if you've been listening to this for a while, you probably have realized that about now. And it doesn't matter which character. Like I said, we're going to have a video about Voldemort, some more about Snape. I have not forgotten. I introduced a topic called, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I introduced a topic about if Snape is actually a redeemable character, and do not worry, we're definitely going to be continuing that when the moment is right, because there's a couple of moments during the book, the 3rd, the 5th, the 6th, you know, it's coming. And so we'll dive into Snape some more. It'd be really interesting to do one on Dumbledore, especially his last conversation with Harry in the 7th book. I read that recently, and it was wonderful. So yes, diving into character motivations and the internal struggles that they go through. We're going to be doing that with Harry later in this book when it comes to the Slytherin thing, the Slytherin dilemma. That's what we're going to call it now. For some reason, Harry, Ron, and Hermione think it's a good idea to go back to the scene of the crime and investigate, even though that would make it even more suspicious if they were seen, but this is why we love them. And plus, we got to figure out what's going on. They find scorch marks, weird spider behavior, meaningful, and they remember there was water everywhere, which brings them to go into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. And they don't really get any information from her at this point. It's just kind of more to solidify her as a character and let us know who she is, and also set up the scene for the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, because it's literally right there. So we get to see that for the first time, which is kind of cool. So after this, the gang is at a loss. But they come up with a dangerous, rule-breaking plan to sneak into the Slytherin common room and question Malfoy, who could be the heir of Slytherin. And honestly, he is so terrible. We talked about this last week. The way he talks about Muggleborns, the way he seems almost triumphant in the fact that the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Like, I don't judge Ron for this incorrect assumption. I remember being a kid and thinking it was definitely Malfoy in this book also. Actually, something I think is interesting is that Hermione is the one who comes up with this plan. And you know, this is what I love about Hermione. She respects rules and knows the importance of not breaking them, which honestly, I can relate to. I'll admit, I am a goody two-shoes for sure. So I can see where she's coming from a lot of the time when she's not wanting to break the rules. But the thing about Hermione is she's just so much more than that. She's about like seeking out justice, stopping wrongdoing in its highest forms, and catching people in the act when they're doing these things. So like when it comes to bringing people to justice, she's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that's accomplished. You know, it's like a for the greater good thing. Oh my goodness. Didn't know I was going to bring up that saying so soon in the series, but in this instance, I think it's good to look at the fact that, you know, breaking rules for the right reasons might be important at times. And this brings us to the end of the chapter, which is where they decide on Polyjuice potion, which is a long game. I'm telling you, like, for this to be Hermione's first idea, I mean, I know she's been thinking about the Chamber of Secrets for a while, but she wasn't thinking about Malfoy that long before she spits out this idea about this potion that takes a month. It's a very ambitious plan, especially for second-year students. So we are in the last paragraph, which is right after they find out about the Polyjuice potion plan. This Polyjuice stuff sounds a bit dodgy to me, said Ron, frowning. What if we were stuck looking like three of the Slytherins forever? It wears off after a while, said Hermione, waving her hand impatiently, but getting hold of the recipe will be very difficult. Snape said it was in a book called Most Potent Potions, and it's bound to be in the restricted section of the library. There's only one way to get a book out of the restricted section. You needed a signed note of permission from a teacher. Hard to see why we'd want the book, really, said Ron, if we weren't going to try to make one of the potions. I think, said Hermione, that if we made it sound as though we were just interested in the theory, we might stand a chance. Oh, come on, no teacher's going to fall for that, said Ron. They'd have to be really thick. Who do you think they're talking about? Gilderoy Lockhart. He does come in handy in this situation. And this was something I kind of forgot about, that, you know, they had to get a note from him to go into the restricted section. Because I think in the movie, they literally just get the book. Like, it's just out there for the world. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Wow, I am shocked. I have not been recording for that long. But I don't feel bad about that because I thought that this was going to be a really hard video to edit because I was going to have to cut a lot of material. There's sometimes I record for like 35 to 40 minutes and then I have to cut it down. But I've only been recording for like 25 minutes, guys, and this was a huge chapter that we conquered today. So thanks for joining, and I really hope you liked the video. I am sorry because this chapter is one of those that kind of opens up a lot of plot points, but it's just like hinting at them, so we didn't get the chance to like fully dive into any of them the way that I would want to, but it's just because they're going to be coming back later in the book and I don't want to you know, go ahead and finish talking about them before we're there and have all the information in front of us. Next week we have chapter 10, The Rogue Bludger, with this lovely image. So you know what's coming there. I'm considering doing 2 chapters together again because I'm afraid this is going to be a heavy Quidditch chapter. I actually haven't read it yet. And with how quickly we got through this one today, maybe we could join chapters 10 and 11. I don't know. I will let you know for sure before the article comes out. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you for coming today. If you have any thoughts on the subjects we discussed today, as always, please leave a comment. I love to read those and hear from you. And it also gives me more ideas of what to talk about because you guys bring up some awesome points. So thank you for that. I will see you next week for chapter 10 and possibly 11. We'll see. But in the meantime, mischief managed. And we're going to do that thing again. Yes. No.